Okay, quiz 9 study guide today. If you're absent on Thursday this week, the makeup quiz will be posted to Focus. And I also need to remind you that during instructional time, your cell phones are to be put away. So here we go with short answer. Problem number 1. We are finding the value of x, and we've got this triangle. Angle of elevation is 20 degrees. And we're looking for the hypotenuse. So I can't emphasize to you enough to have SOHCAHTOA written on your paper when you're doing any of these sine, cosine, or tangent problems. And memorize the acronym. It's very easy to memorize. And then as soon as you get your quiz tomorrow, write it on the front and write it on the back. And then just verify each problem is set up correctly based on the acronym. So in this case, if this angle of depression is 20 degrees, then its partner angle right here is also 20 degrees. And in relation to this 20-degree angle, we've got the opposite side and we're looking for the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. And we're looking for a side. So if we're looking for a side, we're using regular sine, cosine, tangent. So sine 20 over 1 is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So we're going to crisscross multiply. Sine 20 times x is equal to 1 times 100, which is 100. And then we're going to divide both sides by sine 20. So our x is equal to, we can set the calculator to second fix 1, so everything gets rounded to the nearest tenth. So 100 divided by 20 sine equals 292.4. Problem number 2 is another angle of depression problem. Our angle of depression is 30 degrees, which makes its partnered alternate interior angle also 30 degrees. The bottom of this triangle is 7, and the side opposite the 30 is what we're looking for. So in relation to this 30-degree angle, we need the opposite side, and we know the adjacent side. So opposite and adjacent is tangent. So tan 30 equals the opposite side x over the adjacent side 7. So 1 times x is x, and tan 30 times 7 is 4. Problem number 3. In problem number 3 and 4, we're rounding to the nearest degree. We're trying to find an angle measure now. So when you're finding an angle measure, you're going to be using inverse sine, cosine, and tangent. In relation to this angle, we've got the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So we're doing inverse cosine of the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So there's two ways to do this. We can say here that x equals, so you can do 13 fraction button 18 second cosine equals 43.8, and we are going to the nearest degree, so that's 44 degrees. Number 4, we've got another right triangle. And we're looking for an angle measure. We're given the hypotenuse at 17, and the side opposite the x is 7. In relation to the angle we're trying to find, we've got opposite and we've got hypotenuse. We're trying to find an angle measure, so we're using inverse sine of the opposite side, which is 7, over the hypotenuse, which is 17. So 7 over 17, second sine. 24.3 rounds to 24 degrees. Problem number 5. This problem 5 and 6 are word problems. So we're just gonna, I'm not gonna write out the whole word problem, but we're gonna call this Viola drives. And you'll recognize it tomorrow by that. Viola drives 4 kilometers up a hill that makes an angle of 4 degrees with the horizontal. So you got Viola and she's gonna drive up a hill. So this is our right triangle. And we're going to put Viola right here. She's driving 4 kilometers up this hill. So this is our 4. At an angle of 4 degrees. To the nearest tenth of a kilometer, what horizontal distance has she covered? What horizontal distance has she covered? This is our horizontal distance. Call it h. So this is a trig problem where in relation to this angle of elevation, we're looking for adjacent and we've got the hypotenuse. And adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So cosine of 4 equals the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And we're going to put this cosine 4 over 1, so we've got a proportion. So we crisscross multiply. H times 1 is h. And cosine 4 times 4. To the nearest tenth of a kilometer. Okay. So this might be a case where you need to come off second fix 2. And to the nearest tenth, so we're going to go second fix 1 equals. We've got to start the problem over. Reset your calculator on this one to second fix 1 before you start. And we're going to go 4 cosine times 4. And we get 4 again, but this side can't be 4. So we've got to use more digits of cosine. So I'm going to go second fix 4. 4 cosine times 4 equals. All right, 3.99. Okay, so it turns out it's 4 anyway, so our h is equal to 4. 3.99, which is really 4. It's kind of odd question because we really shouldn't have the hypotenuse equal to one of the sides of one of these triangles, but that's because this angle is so low, and it's also because this length is 3.99 and it's getting rounded to 4. So moving on to problem number 6. Problem number 6 is another word problem. We're going to call it conveyor belt. A conveyor belt carries supplies from the first floor to the second floor. So what we've got here, it's another triangle problem. Here's your conveyor belt. Here's our first floor, and here's our second floor. A conveyor belt carries supplies from the first floor to the second floor, which is 18 feet higher. So if we drop a vertical in here, this is 18. The belt makes a 60-degree angle with the ground. So we'll complete this right triangle. We get a 60-degree angle of elevation. How far do the supplies travel from one end of the conveyor belt to the other? So things are going up this hypotenuse. Okay? So how far did the supplies travel? So I'm going to call this T. And this is the first part of the question. So we've got the opposite side. We're looking for the hypotenuse. So that's sine. So sine 60 equals sine 60 over 1 equals the opposite side 18 over the hypotenuse, which is T. So we're going to crisscross multiply. Sine 60 times T is sine 60. T equals 1 times 18, which is 18. And then we divide both sides by sine 60. Sine 60s cancel, and your T falls down. So 18 divided by sine 60. To the nearest foot, round your answer to the nearest foot. I get 20.78, which we're going to round to 21. So the supplies are traveling 21 feet up this hypotenuse. The second part of the question says, if the belt moves at 75 feet per minute, if the belt moves, this is a conveyor belt, and it moves 75 feet in 60 seconds. We're going to set this ratio as feet to seconds. 75 feet in 60 seconds. We're going to make it equal to 21 feet in s seconds. The question is, to the nearest tenth of a minute, how long to the nearest tenth of a minute does it take the supplies to move from this to the second floor? So actually, since they're looking for their answer in minutes, I'm going to write a second proportion as feet to minutes. 75 feet in 1 minute equals 21 feet in m minutes. If they would have asked for the answer in seconds, you would have wanted to set your ratio as feet to seconds. Since they asked for the answer in minutes, we're going to write our proportion in feet per minute. So we're going to crisscross multiply. 75 times m is 75m, and 1 times 21 is 21. So we got to divide both sides by 75 now. And our m, which is the number of minutes, is equal to 21 divided by 75, which is 0.28 minutes. So how long to the nearest tenth of a minute does it take the supplies? To the nearest tenth of a minute here, it's 0.3. Everybody clear on that portion? The 0.28 rounded to the nearest tenth is 0.3. The amount of the distance that it traveled on the conveyor belt was rounded to the nearest whole number, 20.7 rounded to 21. So be real careful when you're doing that problem tomorrow. All right, number 7. Nothing but triangles for the rest of the study guide. We've got this left side that's X, we've got a 40-degree inside angle, and we've got the side opposite the 40 is 10. We've got an opposite and adjacent. Tan 40 over 1 equals the opposite side X over the adjacent. Nope, made that mistake. Equals the opposite side 10 over the adjacent side X. So we crisscross multiply. Tan 40x is equal to 1 times 10, which is 10. Divide both sides by tan 40. Our X is equal to 11.9. These last 7 problems, we're rounding them all to the nearest tenth. I'm sorry, it's last 5 problems. Number 8. Hypotenuse is 14. Interior angle is 34. Adjacent side is X. We're dealing with adjacent and hypotenuse. So cosine 34 over 1 is equal to adjacent side over hypotenuse. X times 1 is X, and cosine 34 times 14 is 11.6. Number 9. Interior angle of 32 degrees. Hypotenuse X. Adjacent side 10. Adjacent and hypotenuse again. So cosine 32 equals the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Cosine over 1. So cosine 32 times x equals 1 times 10 is 10. Divide both sides by cosine 32. X equals 10 divided by 32 cosine. 11.8. Number 10. Left side is 20. Hypotenuse is x. Interior angle of 29. In this case, we're working with opposite and hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So sine 29 over 1 is equal to the opposite side over hypotenuse. Crisscross multiply. Sine 29 times x is equal to 1 times 20. Divide both sides by sine 29. X is equal to 20 divided by 29 sine equals 41.3. And last, but certainly not least, number 11. Has a hypotenuse of 9, interior angle of 30, and an adjacent side of x. Adjacent and hypotenuse. Cosine again. Cosine 30 over 1 equals the adjacent side x over the hypotenuse, which is 9. So 1 times x is x. Cosine 30 times 9. 7.79. So that's 7.8. And that completes your study guide for quiz 9. Again, remember, if you missed the quiz in class, it will be posted on Focus as a makeup.